Hello my people, ¿cómo están? ¿Cómo están? Espero que estén muy bien. Yo les comento que acabo de ver un video que ustedes me recomendaron de las Malvinas, y junto a ese link también me dejaron uno que dice: Malvinas, Británicos hablan de cómo peleó la Argentina. El video anterior me dejó, si usted me ve los ojos así chiquititos y súper hinchados, es que me cansé de llorar viendo ese video. Y bueno, nada, tuve que esperar un poquito para poder hacer el otro. No dejaba de llorar. Antes de comenzar a ver este video, quiero agradecerles a cada uno de ustedes por la buena vibra, por la buena energía, por los mensajes que me envían tanto por acá como por Instagram, y las personas que se están suscribiendo al canal y me están siguiendo en Instagram. Muchas gracias por todo el amor, por todo el cariño y el apoyo que me brindan, la verdad. También quería decirles y recordarles que la gratitud nunca está de más. Al contrario, es hermoso ser agradecido. Anexándole esto, les comento que en la parte de abajo del video están los links de las redes sociales que utilizo para quien quiera sumarse. Instagram es la que más uso. Y bueno, ahora vamos a ver el video.
What quality were your opponents? We've mentioned the Air Force, who were extremely courageous and very good. The regular members of the Argentine Army and Marine Corps were also, I think, very good. Their artillery was skillfully handled. Their men manning the machine guns, like the one you mentioned, were extremely skillful and very determined, and stayed there, and jolly well had to be winkled out.
It's been said that the Argentinians did not fight. This was not true.
The Argentines, on all objectives, actually fought. Particularly officers, junior officers, and their regular NCOs, who would man machine guns to the last and would be killed manning a machine gun.
Fighting at night over a period of 48 hours, the British took stronghold after stronghold. Each mountain posed its challenges, and each produced ever more wounded men.
And of course, the battle was not over once you'd taken the objective, because what then happened on all objectives, you were then shelled by the next load of Argentines who were holding positions further back.
On the 11th of June 1982, British troops in the Falklands were preparing surprise night attacks on a series of heavily defended mountains around Port Stanley. The Argentinians now realized that they were under attack. Rifle and machine gun fire, mortars and grenades rained down on the British troops.
It was a gutter fight in the dark, close quarter fighting. Argentines were fighting from behind rocks, a case of throwing grenades over rocks, going around, one man going, other men covering them. Range of visibility really quite short.
Eventually our section got pinned down by 2.5 machine guns close to the summit, and some riflemen. And for a while we were actually, you know, they had actually gained the momentum and gained the initiative from us. It was pretty close, because guys were going down all around you. At one stage we were going, me and another colleague were going up, and next thing he just dropped, and he'd been shot right in the eye there with a 50 caliber machine gun. No chance, he was totally dead.
3 parachutists swept over Longdon, but there was a nest of conscripts around a 50 caliber machine gun halfway along it who said, "No, you're not taking this hill just yet." And that's all it took. I mean, you can be as hard as nails and as well equipped as you like, but if you come up against people who are prepared to stand their ground, you're going to lose men.
It was at this stage that Court McLaughlin was given a command to actually, right, go and get our wounded, get our boys back, get up and go and get them. I moved out, and I found, or ended up at, next to a young guy called Neil Gross. Neil was obviously in some discomfort. We got him onto a poncho and we carried him as best we could. There were lots of people trying to carry Neil, lots of people, because he was in an awful lot of discomfort. So much it was just really sad. It was actually his 18th birthday.
Neil Gross died soon afterwards. 2 17-year-olds were also killed during the battle for Longdon, and 19 other paras lost their lives.
Tanta gente murió con la guerra, chao. Qué duro. Qué fue. La guerra solo el poder, Dios.
If you're a fast jet pilot, you've got to be good, or you're dead. I mean, it doesn't matter which country you come from, because they've got to have bloody good reactions, they've got to be good. And the Argentinians, if you imagine, well, are they sort of racing drivers, polo players? I mean, what better sort of chap to have sitting in a fighter?
They knew what they were doing. They knew how to attack the ship. They all lined up, one after the other, and came up the stern. At that time, the captain ordered full speed. We tried to manoeuvre to get our 20mm to bear, but it seemed whichever way the captain turned the ship, there was an aircraft lined up on the stern, ready to come in.
They came in again. Bombs thunder into the water, yards from our ships. HMS Plymouth, assigned to protect, only just dodged 2 bombs herself.
Huevona.
They targeted the ships, the lifeline for the task force.
How the British task force commanders have underestimated the determination of the Argentine pilots.
Ship after ship in San Carlos water was hit by Argentinian aircraft. The British christened the bay Bomb Alley.
This was the first time I'd seen ships sunk by enemy action in my life.
I was watching Antelope, and suddenly a huge explosion in front of my eyes. Large parts of her superstructure flew up into the air.
I remember that explosion echoing round, and then followed by a series of other explosions that went all night.
It was a shock to see one's own ship explode, burn and sink before one's eyes.
Estaban invadiendo otro país, o sea, no esperen menos.
After that first day, the defences were reassessed. Machine guns were strapped along the ship's sides. Even jets, when they dived below the missiles, put themselves within range. The Belfx guns aboard HMS Fearless claimed 2 planes. The gun crews, mostly 17 years old, soon had more battle experience than anyone else in the Navy.
Sophisticated electronic watchdogs to protect us all. It's on them that we get the greatest comfort from the old Second World War Belfx guns by the bridge. The crew on Belfx port gun have already claimed 2 hits and another probable, and we want to believe them. Up on the decks now, almost as an afterthought, general-purpose machine guns have been mounted by Royal Marines commandos as additional air defense. Odd, we thought, with so many millions of pounds worth of missiles around us, that such a makeshift weaponry should be necessary. But fired together and in the same direction, and a pilot would have to fly through a wall of lead.
The Galahad was lightly armed, and the Welsh Guards had no defence against air attack.
They actually hadn't seen the Argentine Air Force at work, because for the 5 days they'd been there, the bad weather had kept the Argentine Air Force away. So they hadn't seen how deadly those guys could be. And I can tell you, if I'd been on board that ship, I'd have swum ashore rather than stayed there.
Skyhawks 4 or 5 came low across the bay to bomb the 2 landing ships unloading men and supplies. Although missiles were fired, proper air defences hadn't yet been installed. One of the ships, the Galahad, burst into flames immediately. But that wasn't the end of it. The other landing ship, Sir Tristram, began to smoke. It had been hit in the same raid, although the fire took longer to gain a hold. But that ship too was lost, burning fiercely in the night.
To start with, there was nothing there, and we just we waited. It was almost dreamlike, and how can this possibly be happening? And then, but very soon, the realization hits, and there it was going on around us.
Jets just came pouring over the hills. They were firing at us and dropping bombs and firing rockets, but they were so low, so small and so fast that you think there's just no way we're going to hit them. We of course were shooting back. There was all the troops that had got ashore on the hills around were shooting up, and the noise was just colossal.
It was a fantastic, terrifying sight. Aircraft flying and firing at the ships.
The British warships were being relentlessly targeted from every direction.
Claro.
When you're on a warship and you hear over the broadcast, brace, 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 that means you're about to be hit. And I suppose, quite unashamedly, you think, please not me.
You could hear the countdown over the radar, 4 planes approaching from the east, 25 miles, 24 miles, and it's seconds apart because obviously they're going so fast. 5 miles, 3 miles, and you think they're coming straight over us. Are they going to attack us? Have they got Exocet? And then they'll say, overhead, and you just close your eyes, and then you'll hear 1 mile to the west, and you breathe out because it's gone.
The news coming in wasn't really good about what was happening, and we didn't realise quite how many boats would be hit with bombs that weren't going to explode.
The enemy were flying so low to avoid our anti-aircraft systems that many of their bombs weren't exploding when they hit our ships. Making the bomb safe now fell into the hands of the diving team. Tony and William were just 100 metres away from HMS Antelope when an unexploded bomb detonated.
Everyone hit the floor because it was so close. The UXB on Antelope had blown up while the Royal Engineers were defusing it. When a 1,000-pound bomb goes off that close to you, inside the confines of an aluminium ship, it is a shock. It's not just an explosion, I mean, it's huge.
Tragically, one of the Royal Engineers who was attempting to defuse the bomb was killed in the explosion.
Bernie successfully removed the bomb from the Galahad. Naval disposal teams cradled unexploded bombs off 6 other ships. If these bombs had detonated on impact,
Pues se acabó con todo.
the British campaign would have been stopped in its tracks. Then 4 days after the landings, the Argentinians struck another devastating blow. Exocet missiles hit a vital British supply ship, the Atlantic Conveyor. It was carrying 4 giant Chinook helicopters. 3 were destroyed. It was perhaps the single greatest setback of the war.
I had been preparing a plan to move my brigade forward onto the high ground overlooking Stanley, and the key part of that plan was 4 Chinook helicopters.
In the rush to pack equipment onto the task force ships, crucial errors had been made.
The destruction of that one ship changed the tempo of the whole war as far as we're concerned. We would have to walk.
They took off from airfields in southern Argentina, equipped with Exocet missiles, and went in search of revenge.
Son aviones de caza, eso.
HMS Sheffield was on the lookout for enemy aircraft well forward of the main British fleet.
Blind, AWOL, 1 pop-up target, 01010, go back, direct the radar.
The sea was very calm, we were looking out to sea, and I thought that it looked like a torpedo was on its way because the sea was shimmering and shaking, if you like. So I said I thought there was a torpedo. The pilot also had trained his glasses around to the same spot, and he said, no, it's an Exocet. The officer of the watch and other members of the bridge crew started to take cover. But I remember myself and the second officer of the watch becoming transfixed to the missile on its way in, which really does amaze me now when I come to think of it, but we watched it almost to the point of impact when we quickly huddled together and dropped to the floor.
On the 9 o'clock news on May the 4th, the reality of the war was brought into millions of homes by Defence spokesman Ian MacDonald.
In the course of its duties within the total exclusion zone around the Falkland Islands, HMS Sheffield, a Type 42 destroyer, was attacked and hit late this afternoon by an Argentine missile. It is feared that there have been a number of casualties, but we have no details of them yet.
Britain has suffered its first major losses in the Falklands conflict. The Ministry of Defence announced tonight that the destroyer Sheffield came under an Argentine missile attack. It later sank. All the crew who got out of the ship have been picked up, but the ministry spokesman says there were casualties. He didn't say how many. HMS Sheffield, one of the most modern warships in the Royal Navy, normally has a crew of nearly 300 men. As well as her loss, a Sea Harrier was shot down and its pilot killed.
This was no longer a safe land for the foe that they portrayed as a comic or foreign contact. This was real war, and more men from both sides were going to die before it would be over.
And Portsmouth, home base for HMS Sheffield, was a city in mourning. Francis Coverdale has been there.
The local newspaper called it the City of Anguish, and certainly the people of Portsmouth haven't known anything like it since the Second World War. The atmosphere today was in stark contrast to that of 30 days ago, when the first of the task force ships sailed out. Today was the day the reality of the conflict in the South Atlantic came home. The reaction was naturally one of shock.
Well, you know, I got a few mates on there and everything, and I'm heard how they are, but it's very disheartening, and, well, I can't really say much more. It's shocked us all.
I think it's terrible. I mean, who would have thought it came to this, and to hear a ship go down, one of ours as well, when it is bad.
Was it that much of a shock?
It was to me, yes. I didn't think it would end up with one of ours actually being sunk.
The British commanders had seriously underestimated the Argentine Air Force, committing its planes and its pilots with an almost reckless willingness.
Dos años después, el contraalmirante Woodward, comandante del grupo de batalla naval, explicaba la retirada de los días y decía:
Lo que pasó es que desconocía el potencial de la Fuerza Aérea Argentina. No fue error mío. Cualquiera en mi lugar hubiera actuado como yo. Nada se pudo hacer contra la persistencia de los pilotos argentinos. Fue algo extraordinario. Aparecían por todas partes. Aprendimos a respetarlos.
Estoy sorprendida de la manera ¿saben? Como la otra parte, la parte que ataca, o sea, es que si te pones a ver, esto va mucho más allá de las personas que fueron a la guerra, ¿saben? ¿Por qué inició la guerra? ¿Quiénes mandó a esta gente a la guerra? A quitar este territorio, ¿saben? O sea, hay muchas cosas que yo no sé, que apenas estoy conociendo gracias a ustedes. De verdad estoy muy agradecida porque me están mostrando más de su historia, de su ser, de todo lo que han vivido, de todo lo que han pasado. Y no hay palabras, la verdad, no hay palabras. Acabo de ver el otro video de la guerra de las Malvinas. Y como dicen, o sea, la mayoría eran chamitos. O sea, estos chamos venían entrenados o fueron personas que agarraron, mira, tienes 17 años, vamos para la guerra todos, reclutando gente, ¿saben? O sea, y si fue así, de que reclutaron gente, déjame decirles que nada huevona de arrecho, nada huevona de arrecho, porque, o sea, si no tenían ningún tipo de conocimiento al respecto, lo hicieron muy bien, de verdad. O sea, a pesar de... Qué fuerte, la verdad que para mí este tipo de cosas es muy doloroso, me duele de parte y parte, porque son muchas personas que mueren, son muchas personas que sufren, que no debería de haber pasado algo así. De verdad que las guerras son algo muy... ¿Qué se va a hacer? ¿Qué se va a hacer? Acá dicen, qué risa que el enemigo trate con más respeto y admiración a nuestros soldados que nosotros mismos. Increíble. Hablan muy bien de los argentinos, ¿saben? Risa da porque la verdad te tenés que reír con este país para no llorar. Un país hermoso, pero no siempre el que está al mando. Si es... Estás en Latinoamérica. Respetan a su enemigo porque creyeron que serían pan comido, cuando la realidad fue otra. Hace 2 años estuve en Mendoza, Argentina, y cuando entré a una bodega el dueño me preguntó si yo era chileno. Le dije que no, soy peruano, respondí. Salió a abrazarme y me pidió que almorzara junto a él y su familia. Me contó que sus hermanos lucharon en la guerra de Malvinas y agradecía al Perú por los aviones de guerra que mandó y los barcos con medicina. Una hermosa experiencia lo que viví. Perú y Argentina hermanos por siempre. Qué fuerte. Si quieres saber cómo te fue en la guerra, pregúntale a tu enemigo. Increíble cómo lo cuentan. Ahí tienen, los ingleses hablaron mejor de nuestros soldados que nosotros mismos. Es una risa, no se puede creer. Los soldados ingleses merecen todo el respeto. Por lo que escucho, son bastante buenos. Un veterano de Malvinas argentino me contó que él arriesgó la vida por un compañero y solo por eso los ingleses no lo mataron. Entre ingleses y argentinos movieron todos los cuerpos y se fueron. Wow. Wow, wow. Yo personalmente tengo 14 años y casi lloro literalmente. Se me hizo un nudo en la garganta. Increíble lo que hicieron nuestros héroes. Sin palabras, yo... Gracias por mostrarme, otra vez les digo muchísimas gracias de verdad por mostrarme este tipo de videos que uno desconocía, ¿saben? Yo no tenía ni la más mínima idea cuando llegué a Argentina de todo lo que había pasado y todo esto. Uno desconoce mucho de la historia, de la cultura, y es algo que hay que saberlo, hay que tenerlo presente, ¿no? Y más yo ahorita que estoy acá en Argentina, como que me intereso más por el país y más por su historia, su cultura y todo eso. Nos vemos en el próximo video con más de lo que venga. Yo... Gracias, los quiero mucho. Nos vemos.